Hello everybody, welcome to the Wild Ginger Running YouTube channel, live broadcast and podcast. Today we are speaking to the co-founder of Girls on Hills, mountain leader and author Keri Wallace, who has just written her first book, Running Challenges, which is 100 of the best runs in England, Wales and Scotland. So Keri, how are you doing today?
Not too bad, thank you very much. Yeah.
Good, thank you so much for coming on. We've got loads of questions for you, including a bit of an insight into your own personal favourite routes in this book. But first, just got to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of the broadcast. It's NAC Sports Nutrition. I'm still recovering slowly from bronchitis over the spring and summer, and I'm focusing now on my strength work instead of ultra running right now. So I've been finding their new gels really useful to give me the energy that I need for these sessions. So my favourite one is the chocolate one, but beware, it's also got caffeine in. So watch out, world, when I've been on that one. The maple syrup one is also very nice and caffeine free. So if you want to try these plus their delicious energy bars, waffles, energy and recovery powders, use code WildGingerRunning for 15% off at uk.nac.com. So Keri, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's great to see you. I've met you once in a swimming pool, and then the second was at the Skyline Scotland, where you'd just done the Glencoe skyline. Congratulations on writing your first book. How does that feel?
Thank you. It feels really strange, actually. You know, it's not something I ever set out to do in life. It's just one of those things that came along, an opportunity. So, yeah, I mean, it's really exciting. It's really exciting to see it in bookshops now as well.
Yeah, I've included a link to buy the book in the film description below and the podcast show notes. So everybody go on there and have a look at the book. It's absolutely fantastic. I've been really enjoying reading it. But I just want to, before we start going into the book and what it's about, I just wanted to find out a little bit more about you and Girls on Hills. So despite originally training as a neurobiologist, which also sounds fascinating, we could do a podcast on that next, you are the co-founder of Girls on Hills. So could you tell us a little bit more about that for people who are not familiar with the company?
Yeah, so Girls on Hills got set up in 2018. It was founded to basically just get more women out trail running, really. But we live in a very mountainous area, so we're based up here in Glencoe. And the idea was to try and get people, into the mountain trails, really, and just to build confidence and self-reliance, independence in the hills. So that's kind of how it started, and it's just grown over the years, I suppose. And now we also do sort of a bit of hill walking and navigation. So it's expanded a wee bit to take in other kind of areas of mountain recreation, I guess.
Yeah, and you've also got Nikki Spinks on your roster, haven't you? Amazing Bob Graham eating, Barkley Marathon Challenger, all-round amazing lady working with you. That must be incredible.
I can't think how that came about, actually. I mean, Nancy had helped Nikki with her various rounds in the past, her Scottish rounds, and sort of helped with support and things like that. So she kind of knew her through that. We just got together and decided to have her as a speaker at one of our events. And she's more recently moved up to Scotland, and so we collaborate a bit more, and we've made that a bit more official. So yeah, it's great to have her as part of the team.
That's awesome. And so what kind of things do you offer? Is it like day-long runs, or like can people stay with you for a week? What kind of stuff is on offer with Girls on Hills?
So it's mostly weekend courses and events, some single day ones like the navigation courses, pretty varied, everything from kind of trail running through sort of fell running to sky running, so sort of 2 days of guided sky running or mountain running courses, which can be kind of a bit instructional, so learning how sort of ascending and descending techniques, single day navigation courses, and then also just guided runs, like classic runs like the Ring of Steel, or classic scrambles like the Anakiga, with a guide. And then we've also started doing more and more, I don't want to really call them retreats because they're totally not luxury. They're kind of like no frills weekends, like girls' weekends away, but things like sort of classic running weekends, like in Glen Shiel, we have one in Knoydart, and we have one on the Isle of Arran. And these ones are all in Scotland, in the Scottish Highlands, yeah.
These sound really appealing. I don't know why I've not done one already myself.
You'll have to come along.
Yeah, I will. When I'm allowed to be away from Finley for a bit longer, that's definitely something that will be on my bucket list, because that sounds absolutely incredible. And then winding the clock right back for you, before 2018, before Girls on Hills, maybe even before your neurobiology PhD, how did you personally get into mountain running?
Yeah, kind of a late one in some ways. So, I mean, I was always really sporty. I played lots of different sports, and I played like sort of national level hockey for a while as a junior. So, like, sport was always on my radar, but running was just a thing I did at school. Like, you know, athletics, you just have to do it. So I kind of, that wasn't really a thing high on my list until I was in my 20s, really, when I sort of started running for fitness. So I just ran for sort of general fitness, and I really enjoyed it. And I realised I was quite injury prone on the road, so I started to sort of mix it up with trail running, and really quickly realised that I'm just not injury prone on the trails. So ended up moving completely to trail running, but hadn't really ever been up any mountains. Got invited to go on a 3 Peaks challenge, which was my first ever mountain in my 20s. And went up Ben Nevis and did that 3 Peaks challenge, which in itself is a bit of a story. But the nuts and bolts of it is that I kind of just fell in love with that kind of environment and was just like, this is really cool, but also really sort of like intimidating. So I want to be able to do this properly. And I'd always wanted to get into rock climbing. I'd kind of dabbled with it. So I suddenly just like launched on this complete change of direction.
Wow.
And decided, right, I'm going to do like rock climbing and mountaineering, and I changed my job and I changed direction. I was one of those kind of like crossroads in life, you know. So I made a huge change at that time, moving away from science, moving up to North Wales, and just decided to focus on the mountains and being in the outdoors as my kind of main, passion. Really.
Yeah, and you got your mountain leader as well.
Yeah, so I did that around that time. I just decided if I was going to learn to be in the mountains, I wanted to do it through the right pathway, or at least, you know, like, so a lot of the climbing I'd been doing up until that point, I'd just been sort of like meeting other climbing partners on UK Climbing and just kind of going out with complete strangers. And in that way, you learn, but you also see a lot of bad habits and unsafe, practices. So I decided I kind of wanted to learn the proper way, if you like. So I went on the training courses and I started to go on navigation courses and sort of build up my experience base from zero, really.
Wow.
So
were you not from an outdoorsy family then?
Yeah, we were outdoorsy, but like, I think it was, so I lived on the north coast of Cornwall, so it was like I did a lot of sort of beach stuff. So I did like surf lifesaving like competitions as a kid, played a lot of sport. We did a lot of like going for walks and stuff. But I mean, we didn't have any mountains, so we just did a lot of like, just mucking about on the beaches and coastal walks and stuff like more. We did go onto the moors a fair bit, and I always loved all that. But yeah, we never went to the mountains.
Fantastic. So you moved to Wales, and that's brilliant. And then in 2011, which it feels to me like yesterday, but actually it was a year.
I know, it's so long ago now.
Ages. Yeah. It's a year before I got a smartphone, because I remember I got a smartphone to watch the Olympics whilst helping on Will Spain's Bob Graham round. And
wow.
So you've done, in 2011, you did all 3 of the UK's famous rounds. So that's the Bob Graham, Charlie Ramsey and the Paddy Buckley, which is in Wales. And they are in the book. I think I saw the Bob Graham in there.
Yes,
I thought probably all 3 would have been there.
Yeah, I had to have all 3 in there.
But you did them back to back in 2011 for charity. How long did that take? And so tell us a bit about that.
I have to clarify at this point that I didn't do them in 24 hours. So I sort of always a bit like, I know, maybe I didn't really do them, but I did the routes. You know what I mean? So I didn't do the 24-hour round challenges, but
you did.
I decided to do them kind of back to back. And as I mentioned, I was kind of coming at this from a zero perspective. So by this time, I'd obviously built up a fair bit of experience, but I didn't actually, I always think this is kind of funny now looking back, I didn't know anybody who'd done any of them, right? Yeah. And I literally went into a bookshop and bought the map.
Yeah.
And at that time, there wasn't a map of the Ramsey round. And I actually contacted Charlie Ramsey and said, there's not a map, and they made one. So now there's a trilogy. But
You've been such a trendsetter.
At the time, there wasn't an official map for the Ramsey round. So I literally just went out and used the map and did some recce's and went out and planned an adventure for myself, really, a challenge, my first kind of big challenge, because I'd had a running injury. I was finding it really difficult to race, but I could do sort of long days in the hills because it's really different. And I wasn't kind of pushing the pace or anything. So I decided to go out and do these things. I thought, if I'm going to do something slower, it has to be really long. So I decided to do a bit like you would do with the Three Peaks Challenge, because I drove between them. So it wasn't a grand round like John Kelly by any stretch of the imagination. But it was the same seed of an idea. So it was the 3 rounds kind of back to back. And I planned to do each round over 3 days each was the plan. So it's still fairly big, but totally doable, I think, for a lot of people. And I actually ended up doing it quite a bit quicker than I'd sort of planned. So it was actually quite a relaxed itinerary. But I just got absolutely hammered by the weather, and actually ended up falling short by two summits. So I actually finished on Anach Mór and didn't do Carn Mogerag and Ben Nevis because it was a blizzard and I'd been going for 10 days. It was 60-mile-an-hour winds. I'd been blown over a couple of times. My battery was low, and I just had to say, do you know what? I actually feel fine, but this is completely unsafe now. And I felt like I was really pushing it. So really gutted to come down so close to the end. So that's the story behind that initial challenge.
Have you since done those two? So at least I have done it.
Oh yeah, I mean I've done those too like a million times.
Yeah, multi-day means whatever days.
So I mean, so I did my summer tranter and winter tranter in the last couple of years, so that includes those bits. And so I mean I know them all pretty well now, but people have said, well, you'll smash it next time. I'm like, you clearly have no idea how horrendous like it felt, and I'm not going to do it again.
No. Yeah, exactly. Well, I've done the Bob Graham over 4 days.
Yes.
That's hard enough. And I've done the Bob Graham over 1 day and a bit.
Yes.
Like you, well, not like you because I wasn't doing all 3, but I did it 26.5 hours. But no, I don't need to do it under 24.
Yeah, no
I don't need to get in the club.
Yeah.
I did it. I did it. But I do have to say, whenever I've said I've done the Bob Graham round, I always have to say, but
clarify.
not sub 24.
Yeah.
Because you don't want people to get the wrong idea. But that's amazing that you've done that in 2011. And then just fast forwarding to just last year, you got the FKT for the Glencoe. Oh, no, sorry. Then you got the FKT for the Glencoe round and the Winter Tranters round, which is amazing. Then just last year, you were 3rd female in the Skyrunner UK and Ireland series and 5th female in the 170k Ultra Tour de Monte Rosa. It's like over 100 miles. Congratulations on those amazing results. But I'm also thinking, how on earth did you find the time to write the book? Because you would have been writing it during last year, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, actually, funny you should say that. But the initial kind of plan came together in 2020, so it was during the whole COVID time.
Book.
It was a COVID book, so basically I kind of wrote it during that period, and then it's kind of sat on the shelf going through various iterations. We moved the goalposts a few times on what we wanted it to be like, went through a number of edits which took quite a longer than we'd planned, basically, and it's only just kind of come out, so that's kind of how I fitted it in, really.
I see. So it was a stealth, slow build book. And what gave you the idea for it? Because it's just flicking through. It's absolutely fantastic. I've been really enjoying flicking through, because not only have I done about 10 of these routes, it's like it's given me more ideas to do more routes, and I just want to get out right now, having read this book. Look at beautiful pictures all the way through the book to just really inspire you there. I just want to get out right now and do some more of them. What gave you the idea for such a fantastic book?
So I kind of started realising that, like, I guess running rounds and challenges and things was kind of more my thing maybe than races. I kind of had a bit of a fixation, as you've mentioned, with the challenges and some of the mountain rounds in the UK for a number of years. And so when I basically just got into a conversation with the publisher about possible book topics, and we came up with this idea of running challenges. But the idea was really that it wouldn't be just things that everyone might have heard of as a really difficult running challenge, but maybe also stuff that would be a running challenge to anybody who is maybe just getting started with their running. So it would be hopefully as inclusive as possible, going from really short runs, easy sort of introductory runs, right through to kind of big bucket list challenges that most of us probably will never do, but some people might aspire to make that a bit of a life plan. So
or do them over a few days, as
exactly. Precisely that. So but I was also really keen to kind of make the point, and I hope that kind of comes across in the introduction, that for me, a lot of the routes in the book, they don't even make. So I decided to include all routes that I thought were kind of inspiring and gave you more ideas, rather than necessarily choosing stuff that's easy. Because when people plan like a run or a good hike, it's usually something circular, usually something with good parking, usually something, all these things, these logistical things, right? I decided that I wasn't going to pay any attention to that, and so I've got loads of linear routes with really difficult logistics in there, because they may be part of, like, for one, I actually think that really makes it part of the challenge.
Yeah.
So, like, actually pulling these things together, maybe you have to get a bus or a train, or you have to bike back or get dropped off. But to me, that's all part of the fun, right?
Yeah.
And planning all that is also part of the fun for me. But that's kind of because I'm a bit nerdy when it comes to logistics. But
I love that.
but then the other side of it is that, like, a lot of those linear runs are part of longer trails, and it's making the point that this is just one section, and you could go further and extend that, or shorten it, or link them over multiple days. Etc. So the idea was really to give people inspiration, rather than specifically to say these are the exact routes that I suggest that you go and do.
Yeah.
And so the introduction gives some suggestions around planning your own challenges and encouraging people to sort of just get creative, really, with their running.
Yeah, and I really liked how there's a section in each one which just says other options and what's next. So you've got like the what's next section just at the end there, and it says sometimes it says easier things, sometimes it says similar things, and sometimes it's like progression type routes, and I just think that's brilliant, because not only have you given us 100 running challenges in this book, you've probably given us over 1,000 with all those other suggestions as well.
It's quite hard.
There's a lot of routes in here. It's absolutely amazing. I also thought it was interesting the way that it doesn't link to any GPXs, and I thought that was really nice, because you've got the map and the gradient profile in there, but no GPXs. And I just thought, well, that's good, because you don't want to be sending out people just following a watch on this. You want people to have the skills, or become one of your courses to get the skills.
Yeah, well, this was one of the long conversations we had, and I was because initially we did write the book with route descriptions, and we were going down that route more. And I was kind of like, for some of these rounds especially, it does take ages, but also I think it's saying, like, this is specific, this is exactly the route. And some of these challenges don't have a specific route. And some of them have lots of variations, and you have to pick one. Or sometimes it's even like maybe there's secret cut-throughs, or, like secrets of the trade that you shouldn't really just be putting in a book. And I just feel that, like, planning the route, being able to navigate it, knowing where it goes, and maybe going even wrecking some of it if you want to, could be a really, it's a big part of what makes it really rewarding at the end of the day. And it's part of, I don't know, the kudos that goes with it is having done all the work that brings you to that point, rather than just being, taken round it, or following a line on your watch. So I think that's a really big part of it.
Yeah, and yet the book is not elitist in any way, because there's a parkrun in there, that you can either do on parkrun day or just do it whenever you like. So it's very much welcoming and caters to beginners. And I really like the part of the book where you talk about the ethos of the challenge and finding out a bit more of the history and the depth of information about stuff out there. How important to you is the ethos of the challenge?
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. And people do all these challenges in lots of different styles with lots of different approaches, and my view is that they're all all fine, they're all great, as long as you're transparent about it. I think the whole thing gets a bit nasty if people start saying, "Oh, I did this," when they didn't, or people. It's like when you read about people getting in a taxi in a in a marathon or whatever. It's that kind of thing. It's like, just say what you did.
Say you were supported.
Say you were supported, or say you didn't do the last two summits, or you drove between them, or whatever it is. Because I think that's just. That in itself is part of the overall ethos of running challenges and the running community, is just keeping these things really transparent, whether it's about conditions or times or support, whatever. So I think that's a big part of it, but I also don't think it detracts anything from it if you do something supported or unsupported or semi-supported or self-supported, whatever it is you do. I just think it can be so rewarding. I mean, obviously the best times that you'll see on a lot of these kind of speed challenges will be people that are fully supported in every single possible way, to the point of cutting off their shoes or being physically fed by someone else. These are the things that are happening, because these are elite athletes that are trying to get the absolute pinnacle of performance from their bodies, whereas there are others like me who are maybe going out to have a journey, to have an experience, because that's not my level, in which case I might actually just get more from going solo and taking loads more time over it, because it's more challenging for me to do it that way. And so it's really about your why, I guess. It's kind of like what you want to get out of it.
Yeah, and I thought it was really interesting in the book you said there's no growth without challenge. So challenge must be an important part of you and your personality and what you give to your clients in Girls and Hills as well.
Yeah, so we're always kind of striving to find that kind of like fuzzy edge of the comfort zone for people, because I think that, like, and I don't just think this in running, I mean, I think it's kind of, a metaphor for life really, which is just that if you don't, practice doing things that scare you a tiny bit, you don't push the edges a touch, then basically that edge just kind of creeps back in on you. And that's why as we get older, we get more like reticent to do things and anxious about traveling or going, like, I think people, as we age, we naturally become more, we seek out comfort a bit more, and we don't want to stretch ourselves. And I think if you keep doing that, you can maintain some of those sort of skills and some of that confidence as you go through life. So I do think that's important, and especially if you want to, improve and develop. If you just keep on doing the same thing over and over again, it's just not going to change, is it? So that's why I think it's a big part. But I don't think it's just to do with running. I think it'll be to do with your career, it'll be to do with your family, it'll be to do with life choices, and I think that's just definitely.
So always pushing the envelope.
Yeah, I think so. And just like changing it around, because I mean, I know that when you said there about my bio that's in the back of the book, I think, I guess that for me, the enjoyment comes from just trying new things all the time. So like, I'm definitely not like, I don't really have like a one thing that I've focused on doing. Like, so, if I try a trail race, try a fell race, try a sky race, try an ultra, just trying different things. And some of them definitely aren't suited to me, but the fun comes in just trying something new and applying myself to something different. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely applying yourself to something different. It's nice to try a variety of things, I think. And I noticed in the intro as well, you do talk about environmental ethics of these type of challenges, and you recommended lift sharing and getting the train and getting a bus back and things like that on the linear routes. How important is the environment to you when you're thinking about doing your own running challenges?
Yeah, so I think when I'm planning my own, it's not a huge priority other than what I take with me, because in terms of like food and rubbish and trying to be sort of try and think of a sustainability kind of approach. But that's because I'm a mum of 2 kids. I stay a lot of the time, I'm very local. I don't, use a lot of transport to get around, so a lot of my challenges are local and have been unsupported in that way. But what I'm kind of aware of is that as we start promoting these running challenges in the same way as when we promote races, we're bringing a huge footfall and a huge human impact to popular beauty spots and maybe even parts of our fragile kind of upland landscapes. And races will often now, you'll see, try and offset that with some sort of carbon offsetting, or they'll have trees not teas, or, teas not trees even. No, other way around.
Oh, no, yeah, you got it right the first time. I always do that as well. It's really hard.
You definitely don't want teas not trees.
Yeah.
But my point is that there's an offsetting there, but when we're doing our personal challenges, we often don't think about that. And as they gain traction, I mean, something like the Bob Gray round is huge now. So many people do it, and the route has become a lot more eroded and worn over the years, because it's a great route, because it's so popular. But people also do use a lot of support. So I think, what can we do to reduce the impact on those routes? One would be to think about going to alternative routes, and others would be to reduce the number of pacers and supporters that you might use. And then, all the usual things of thinking about the kit that you use and the, sustainability of the products that you use, I guess, when you're training and racing and doing these challenges. So I mean, it is very important to me. When I say it's not important to me when I go on my own challenges, I only mean that it's, I'm, I suppose, lucky enough to literally live in the middle of Glencoe. So, I don't do loads of challenges all over the rest of the UK, partly because of my own family sort of constraints as well. But yeah, I think that I've tried to think more mindfully about that now than I do, maybe than I would have even 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think it's really got onto the current zeitgeist, and for very good reason. So yeah, I ask everyone these things these days.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering about how the book writing process went for you. So like with all that travel in mind, and you've got 2 kids, quite young still, did you actually run all 100 of the routes? I was wondering.
Not at all. Yeah, no, not at all. And I sort of made that point clear to the publisher when we got started. I was like, I'm not going to be able to do all of these routes, right?
Yeah, it's impossible unless you've just done them over a lifetime. You just happen to run all the best
not at all.
ones.
So I think how can you sort of claim to have put together 100 of the best or the 100 best runs or something like that? You can't, because it's all relative to, what you kind of enjoy. So really it ought to say 100 of Keri's favourite runs in Scotland, Wales and England.
And ones she's heard about from her friends.
Yeah, but I think it's really like, so the things that had to, for me, the things that made me put these routes in above others were either there being the hardest version of something, the most scenic version of something. So quite often, if it was a long distance trail, it's my tendency to choose the most remote section with the least support. So there tends to be those sections on some of the ultra distance trails. Just very well known kind of popular things that are kind of classics or kind of rites of passage. And then also I've thrown in there some races, which I think are kind of really iconic races, which are definitely sort of bucket list for people. They might have them on their tick list. That obviously you could go and do, as a recce, you could do the event. Either way, it would be a challenge. And some just really nice starter runs, some mountain rounds that people may have done and maybe alternatives they hadn't even thought of. So I think it was just kind of like, finding stuff that kind of piqued my interest and hoped that it would pique other people's interests, including some kind of strange ones like Race the Train.
Just some like and kind of man versus horse.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of a few kind of interesting asides, but and obviously I've been working in the running industry now for quite a while, and so fairly sort of connected to people who are doing these kinds of things. And so I guess a lot of the research process was like making contact with these kinds of people and getting their kind of feedback and their advice about what was better and how they found it, and the routes themselves. And so it was reaching out to people across Wales, England and Scotland, and kind of trying to pull together that expertise as well as put in ones that I personally enjoyed doing. So mix.
Sort of a team effort, and it's got some great inspirational photos as well. It just reading it makes me want to just pop out and tick a few more off immediately. Will you be giving a special prize to the reader who completes all 100 of these routes?
We actually did discuss that, and we haven't actually come down on a decision about it, but we didn't know if people would actually try to do that or not. But certainly I've seen people saying things like, I must kind of like start ticking those off, and I'm like, well, that the Wainwright's round and the Munro round is in there.
Yes,
so
it'll take a few years.
It could take a while, absolutely. But I think it might be nice for people to start with like trying to do the ones in for me it would be like do the Scottish ones or whatever. I've obviously done more of the Scottish ones than I have the others. So
Yeah, well, if you know of anybody who does complete all 100,
I'm sure
I will interview them.
If anyone actually does all of them, get in touch, because I'm sure we will find you a special prize.
Yeah, a free book.
Absolutely.
A framed cover with signed. And obviously, I don't want to spill too many beans here, because obviously everybody's going to go out and buy your book. The link is in the YouTube description and the podcast show notes. But could you just share with us your personal favourite routes in each country? So one for Scotland, one for England, and one for Wales. What are your absolute faves? Or not even your favourites necessarily, just ones that you think my audience would really like. So we've got everybody that follows Wild Ginger Running, actually, from like, people who are actually injured and can't do anything at the moment, right the way to people running 100 milers and more. So there's loads of variety of people.
So gosh, I think one of the ones that I enjoyed reading and writing about in the England one was the Helvellyn Edges, just because I kind of have raced on these hills in the Sky Running series that you've mentioned, and they're just, so it kind of is, for me, it's like a pinnacle of all my interests, because it's got the kind of climbing, scrambling element, and it's like, you know, I mean, the Lake District is amazing, beautiful and accessible, and it's got some great running, and it's got some great races in that area as well. So going and linking up the Helvellyn edges just feels like such an epic day out.
Is that striding edge and then swirl edge?
Yeah, exactly.
Around in a sort of a horseshoe.
Yeah, so I think that's one that I definitely recommend having a go at if you're kind of that inclination when it comes to your running.
Like scrambling,
it's a certain type of terrain. Yeah, exactly. See, do you know what's really interesting is in the Scotland one, I haven't included any in Glencoe, which is really pretty shocking because there's so much great running here. But the reason is just because there's so many other good ones in my local area that they kind of got like a little bit out competed, because I obviously had to include like the Loch Arbor Traverse in there, and I've also got the Ring of Steel in there. So I think those routes, you know, for me, they're my like stomping grounds. So they're my ones that I would recommend having a go at in Scotland. And in Wales, I think, let's have a think. I'm trying to think what my favourite one would be. I don't know. I think something like, to go with a more sort of more accessible one, something like Penyvan and some of the runs I've suggested around the Brecon Beacons, because they are very, very popular hills, but I think they're a great introduction to hill running, because, you know, it's quite, you know, easy to get up with them not being too high, and then you really feel like you get that proper sort of fell running experience without so much of the so much of the climb, I guess, and it's just really, really striking shaped mountains as well, and just a really beautiful part of the country. So yeah, I think I would include that.
Yeah, and the paths there, they're kind of like, they are rocky, but not quite so rocky as like Striding Edge, or
so it's not technical,
or like Ring of Steel, and you know, like
so both of the other two I mentioned are more like kind of like things that I like to do. But I think so thinking about, I mean, so I've got routes in Wales like this, you know, like the Snowdon Skyline, which would be kind of equivalent really to the ones I've mentioned.
Cribgoth, and then over,
that's right.
What's that other one called on the other side?
On the other side, Llywith. So that, you know, there's obviously those kinds of routes in there for Wales, but I was just thinking, like, actually, you know, for those people who are listening who prefer something a bit more undulating,
a bit more runnable.
A bit more runnable. I think in terms of mountains anyway, I think the Brecons are definitely a good go-to.
Awesome. Well, that sounds brilliant. I did notice that there weren't any in the Midlands.
Yes, sorry about
you
that.
Obviously haven't been to Stamford or know anybody who's run around Stamford.
Yeah, it's very difficult actually to get, like, you know, you don't want to end up, I mean, obviously my interest is kind of coming from a mountain perspective, and I did try quite hard not to be too biased, but it's tricky to get a good spread.
You could have done 2 books, couldn't you? Like even mountain running challenges,
absolutely,
and then easier running challenges.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
so it's
so
really
much
difficult
scope to do another book.
That umbrella term of trail running, like what is included, and for me, trail running is basically just includes the lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's kind of an umbrella term. So it's pretty varied. The book's pretty varied, and so 100 covers a lot of different types of running as well.
Yeah, and like as I said before, not only are there 100 routes in this book that are like really well mapped and gradient profiles, all the stats and the start distances and ascents and everything, there's also a ton of other suggestions as well. So it's very good value for money. You get about 1,000 routes in there. And just coming back to not putting any routes in Glencoe, were there any routes that you absolutely love that you just couldn't fit in the book or didn't want to put in the book? What got away?
So I guess the main thing in Glencoe is the Glencoe skyline, and it's listed in one of the, you know, what next sections for some of the more technical running challenges that are in the book. But I was quite reluctant to go too much into the very technical running. So like nothing's really over in the book. Everything should be kind of easy scrambling at, you know, at the top end.
Not like
and obviously. Yeah, so as soon as you do the Anakiga, if you don't have that kind of experience background in sort of scrambling, you probably would need to be roped with a guide for that. So I don't just want to include that in a running book and just sort of like send people, you know, along there without realising what it involves. But if you're listening and you are interested in doing a route that obviously the Glencoe skyline no longer exists or no longer runs as an event anymore. But we just recently launched a new running challenge called the Swift Half with Silva. So it's the Silva Swift Half in collaboration with the Clachaig Inn, which is just down the road from us.
I'll have to link to that.
Yeah, please do, because it's raising funds for the Glencoe Mountain Rescue Team.
Okay.
So there is an official map, HARVEY map, that you can buy for the round, and it's one of those very technical ones, so you do need to be happy scrambling, because it does include the Anarchiga. So warning.
The Mountain Rescue will need those funds that you've raised to rescue you.
I'm not trying to drum up work for the Mountain Rescue Team. I'm trying to raise funds for their extension. but yeah, anyway, we've long needed a round, just in the centre of Glencoe. So if you're visiting and that's your bag, then do have a look at that. It's on our website, Swift Half, and there's a link there to get the map.
Awesome. Well, I'll link to that as well in the film description below. And also I've got a film, I'll try and remember to link to it up here, which is how to scramble across the Anarchiga, and that was with Donnie Campbell from the Salomon team.
Oh yes.
Ages ago, when it used to be a race, I went out and I did it with him, not at any great speed. and so for you, Keri, you've done all these FKTs, you've written your book. What's your next challenge for 2024 and beyond?
So I've been describing this year as a little bit of a fallow year for me, because I actually just moved house and I had big races last year and did quite a lot for me anyway. Not that much on this year, but I've entered the Arc of Attrition for January.
Which one? The 50 or the 100?
The 100.
I think one of those crazies.
You know what I think about challenges. I just sort of felt like I should probably do the 50, so therefore I did the 100.
I tried to do the 50, did you know, in January. I tried to do the 50. I got to 40 miles, and then I got timed out. I was 15 minutes off the cutoff.
Oh, what a shame.
I got all lost in the sand dunes at Gadrivi. Is that how you pronounce it, Gadrivi? I got told off for pronouncing it wrong last time.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you, but even though I'm from Cornwall, I actually still can't tell you.
I think I'd seen it wrong. I'd written it down wrong in my book, and I was calling it Gadevri, which was like really wrong. But yes, you'll love that because you're from there, so you'll know.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually a section I haven't run that section. So I'm from North Cornwall, and so the North Coast's much more familiar to me.
You've got part of it in the book. There is the Coast to St Ives section in there,
which is why I included that section, because it's more local to me. I do know that section, and I think it's a really beautiful area. So maybe it's a bit less well known than some of the other sections of the coastal path. So so I've entered this race because it's in my local county, and I've never done one of these big races. So, and I've never done anything with UTMB series before, and that's not really why I picked it out. It was just that I was going to enter this year, and then they came along and
hijacked it,
bought it out. So hijacked it. So I'm going to do it anyway, because it's the only thing I'm going to do this year, really, or in the end of this year. So that's my next challenge.
Amazing.
I guess.
How's the training going? Because I can't fit anything in. I've got 4 jobs now and a 3-year-old, and I just find that I'm absolutely exhausted. Even a park run will wipe me out these days. Even though I did 5 ultras within the space of 12 months, like April to April last year, I just can't do anything anymore. How are you doing this training?
Well, that's a very good question. So I've just been away for a month with my family. My husband works abroad about a third of the year, so a lot of the time I'm solo parenting.
Solo as well. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and my girls are like 7 and 9, so they're still quite little. So they still need me a lot.
And do all the weekend stuff?
Yeah, so I basically can't.
Okay.
So I don't do as much guiding on the girls on Hills courses as I used to. And I have to do my running and my job and everything in school hours. That's kind of how I go these days. But yeah, the training, it's hard to fit it in. I haven't done anything like as much so far as I planned to, as is usually the way. But I also am not looking at this race as something. I mean, I never really look at these races. Since having kids, I don't tend to look at the races as like, I feel like I should finish around here or get in at this sort of time. Like, I'm very much just like, this looks like a cool race that's always been on my radar. It's somewhere I can see my family, they can come watch me at the same time, and it will just be a cool adventure. It's definitely iconic, and it'd be nice to finish. So that's kind of my aim. So I'll just do the best I can with training, I guess.
Yeah, I think the cut-off times are quite harsh, aren't they? It's one of the harshest cut-off times I've ever been on for a 50 mile.
Yeah, I have to confess to having not looked to see how if it's changed. But with cut-offs, I tend to try to just think, I always feel like, I remember asking Nikki Spinks this the first time she ever came to work with us, and she was telling me about her rounds and pacing rounds. And I was saying to her, like, so if you're kind of a bit behind the timetable, the schedule, you just go faster. She was like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, see, that's where we're different, because I basically can't go any faster.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going the best. Like, no, there is no other reserve.
Yeah, there is no, right? There is no faster.
Certainly not
totally
on something of that, like, of that magnitude. And so I'm not thinking to myself that if I get timed out, I would have, if I'd watched more closely, I could have just gone faster.
Yeah.
I think if I get timed out, I get timed out.
Yeah.
And I'll just go and put in what I can.
Yeah. And
I'm trying not to worry about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was a great race. Like, I really enjoyed that 40 miles that I did. Like, of all the ultras that I did that year, that was my favourite, even though I didn't get round. The views were amazing. The course was brilliant. The people were lovely. And also, I have, like, the caveat that if I hadn't been filming, maybe I could have got round.
Maybe, I'm sure that's true. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, it's also really unusual in terms of the profile. So as I say, because I'm from that neck of the woods, I kind of realised that the coaster path is incredibly steep, but it's just like tiny little up downs. It's so different from like the kind of ascent profile that you would get running around Glencoe. So training for this is going to have to look a little bit different. And every time I run at home, I just think, God, that was so much harder than I expected it to be, because of that constant small up and downs. So I've got no illusions it's going to be an easy one at all. So yeah, I think I'll just go and struggle and see how I get on.
Go and crack on. That's fantastic next challenge. I'll look forward to following you on that. And how can people follow you? How can they follow Girls on Hills and buy the book? What's the best route? I've put a link in the description, but how would you like them to follow you?
So you can follow us. So our website is girlsonhills.com if you want to find out more about Girls on Hills. Pretty much everything we post on Instagram, so you can find us at Girls on Hills UK. And for the book, just head over to Vertebrate Publishing, and it's in their list of new books. So, or in the running section, you'll find it in there. That's probably the easiest thing to do.
Awesome. I've got some quick fire questions before you go. So don't even think about it. Just say what you feel.
Clearing the mind.
Clearing the mind on morning run or evening run?
Evening run.
Oh. Wine or beer after a challenge?
Wine.
A wild camp or a bunkhouse?
Oh, a wild camp. Yeah.
Cool. Poles or cheat sticks?
Poles.
Very good. Taylor Swift or Slipknot?
Oh gosh, that is very difficult, because I'm definitely not with either of those, but probably Taylor Swift.
You could say neither.
Yeah, probably Taylor. I'm probably more of a Swiftie. Yeah.
Cats or dogs? This might be a bit easier. Who knows?
Oh God, I'm not really very good with cats or dogs. We've got 2 hamsters. Does that count?
Yeah, hamsters. And glass half full or glass half empty?
Half full, definitely.
Yes, I thought so. So just before we wrap up, I just need to do a little thanks to NAC Sports Nutrition. You'll definitely need some of their gels, bars, waffles and drinks powders for Keri's running challenges. So use code WildGingerRunning for 15% off at uk.nac.com. So thank you so much, Keri. We really appreciate your time today. It's been really brilliant chatting with you, and I hope this episode will really inspire lots of runners to buy your book and try some of these brilliant challenges. So you'll find a link to it in the film description below or the podcast show notes. Thank you, Keri.
Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. Bye, everybody.